It's Monday night, and you know what that means. Jersey First TV probably brings to you the latest edition of Real Talk. And yes, I am the generational talent in Garden State Media because, folks, my level of honesty, now more than ever, is truly necessary in this era of journalistic deception. That's right, folks. You know what? When it comes to the liberal media, the times look their darkest. That's right. I fight the hardest. It's me, Fernando, Uribe. Happy Monday. Happy May to everyone here. Happy Cinco de Mayo. I want to thank you all for tuning in from wherever and however you may be doing so right now on Facebook Live via StreamYard, also on the Jersey First YouTube page, as well as all of our other social media platforms. And folks, if you haven't done so already, what are you waiting for? It takes just a few seconds to do so. But of course, make sure you like us on Facebook and follow us on Instagram and X. And for all of you that subscribe to us on YouTube or haven't done so already, like, comment, share, and most importantly, click the subscribe button, and you'll be automatically notified of all the great content brought to you by Jersey First TV every single week here. And of course, whether you get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, download Jersey First, and of course, take it with you anywhere at any time, whether you're walking your dog, changing diapers, doing some grocery shopping, shopping online. Folks, I'm pretty sure you have your smartphone with you. Guess what? Check out Jersey First TV. You definitely will not be disappointed. And I can't say enough what a privilege it is to be on the dream team of Garden State Media. That's right, folks. It is Jersey First TV. Of course, brand new episodes of the Nader Narrative premiere every Thursday, hosted by my outstanding tag team partner, the great Elizabeth Nader. And of course, brand new episodes of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe premiere every Monday night. Check your local listings, of course, for start times. And of course, folks, it's always advocating and, of course, educating the great people here in the state of New Jersey every single week here, folks. Nobody does it better than Jersey First TV. Folks, you want to stick around for final thoughts? I'm going to have a lot to say, of course. And should you really be surprised, another great month of April here in 2025, 53,000 and counting, of course, all organic views here on the program. Folks, I mean, at this point, are you really shocked anymore about the great traffic here on Real Talk? You shouldn't be if you continue to watch this program, and I'm glad you all do, whether it's family, friends, frenemies, haters alike. I know you tune in every single week. And again, without all of you, that number behind me would not be possible. Of course, folks, it's real traffic because it's Real Talk. More on that later during final thoughts. And folks, I'll have a lot to say, of course. You know what? When it comes to Trump derangement syndrome in the state of New Jersey, no one does it better than Tom Moran. But of course, just when I think he's peaked when it comes to his TDS, he manages to outdo himself, and I'll definitely tackle his new column, or want to call it that, later on during final thoughts. And of course, folks, also when we talk about, just as bad, yes, folks, in the 32nd Legislative District coming up on June the 10th, you have some choices. And I'll tell you why Ravi Bala, the mayor of Hoboken, certainly isn't one of them. And I touched upon it last week, a little bit more in depth this week as well. Folks, you want to stick around for final thoughts for sure. But folks, before we start the program today, I certainly want to take a moment here. And, if I could be serious for a moment, I certainly want to pay my respects to a great journalist. And, when I think about great journalism, a guy who's gritty, who cut his teeth in the business and was fair, folks, I think about Matt Arko. And my sincerest condolences go out to him and his family, of course, and friends and colleagues alike who are mourning the passing of Matt Arko at only the age of 39. We lost Matt last week. And certainly it's a tragedy for everybody in the media landscape, because you know what, when we think about all the accolades and we think about all the testimonials we've heard over the weekend, we think about just Matt Arko being not just a great journalist, but a great human being. And I had the chance to meet Matt a few years ago, and very, very, very briefly, but you could tell when you just talked to him, he was a guy that was just very down to earth. And it wasn't about ego. It was about being for everybody. And obviously, if you've read the testimonials over the weekend, whether it was current governors, former governors, journalists in the field, anybody, you never thought of Matt Arko as a nuisance in media. You thought of him as a necessity. And he was a guy, whether he was covering Chris Christie, covering budget seasons, covering, impending state shutdowns, it didn't matter, folks. Matt Arko called balls and strikes like you wanted it down the plate. And he was a guy that certainly had a lot of fans, not just within the field that he called journalism, but of course, everyone around him. And you saw that over the weekend on social media. And of course, listen, a lot of great quotes from over the weekend concerning Matt Arko, but one really stood out for me. And it's one that I think encompasses how we look at Matt Arco. And certainly, again, shout out to Governors Murphy and Christie collectively for their thoughts over the weekend. Current U.S. Senators Cory Booker and Andy Kim, Attorney General Matt Platkin, certainly Senate President Nick Scutari, along with Assembly Speaker Craig Coughlin. But one quote specifically from over the weekend caught my attention. And it read, quote, Matt Arco was one of my very favorite people and best friends. He was witty, smart, supportive, kind, inquisitive, and remarkably good at sniffing out BS. The bad cop to my good cop, which was so critical to our coverage. He cared deeply about New Jersey holding its leaders accountable, and he knew how to write what was important in a concise way. We had an unusual bond, venturing into a largely silent world to write endless posts on the COVID pandemic in 2020. To those of us who cover the craziness of Jersey politics will never forget one particular moment of chutzpah when a bunch of us reporters waited in the hot Trenton sun for state leaders to emerge from negotiations during the state budget standoff in 2019. Matt wore shorts to the occasion. Bravo, Matt. I would too. We spoke almost every day. I looked up to him. I valued his advice and courage. I will miss him dearly. What a massive loss. Folks, I got to tell you, those words were from politics reporter from NJ Advance Media, Brent Johnson. And they really stood out for me because it just seemed really humanistic. But that's who Matt Arco was. He was just a good human. And in a business where it can be very fickle, and it's very competitive, and it's hard to make friends, Matt Arco had no shortage of friends. And you saw that with all the testimonials that we saw this past weekend. So on behalf of Jersey First TV, to the family and friends of Matt Arco, we sincerely, again, we miss you, Matt. Our sincerest condolences. We will keep your family and friends in our thoughts and prayers during this very difficult time. He was certainly, again, not just a great journalist, but a great man and a great human. And at the end of the day, that's all you want to be, right? And Matt Arco encompassed all of these qualities and more. So when we think about trying to be better journalists, yeah, that's always important in this business. But always remember, let's strive to be better people. When we think about really better people, yeah, we think about Matt Arco. So again, Matt Arco was 39 when we lost him last week. God bless you, man. Rest in peace, and you certainly have left quite a legacy here in New Jersey media. And of course, folks, when we talk about great journalists in New Jersey, let's talk about someone, of course, when we think about all the quotes and testimonials from over the weekend, let's think about someone who really, really honors him every day. And that's my guest tonight. He's the politics reporter for NJ Advance Media, a fellow Rutgers alumnus, baseball fan, and I got to tell you, a musician I'm very envious of. Folks, he's Brent Johnson, joins us live right here on Real Talk. Brent, how are you?
Good. Thank you for having me, and thank you for those really lovely words about Matt.
No, listen, it's my pleasure. And again, I only had the privilege to meet him once very briefly, but again, as I said, you could just tell like how genuine and transparent he was. And those aren't qualities you see every day, especially in this business. So I certainly want to pay my respects to Matt. And again, once again, my condolences to his family during this very difficult time. Brent, the floor is yours. When you think about Matt and you think about what stands out from his work or just what stands out about him as a human being, give us your thoughts.
Well, you keep hearing a lot about Matt, that he was not only a great reporter, but a great person. And let me talk about him as a journalist first. Matt was remarkably good at when he could sniff out hypocrisy, BS, and he just knew when something wasn't quite right, and he wouldn't give up until he found out the truth. He had a reputation of being hard like that. He would just continue until he got the answer he was looking for, and that the answer that the readers deserved. And it's something that I looked up to from him because I tend to be a bit softer. I think I call it, I'm good cop, he's bad cop. And I'm going to miss that tremendously working with him. He made me a better reporter and a better person. And he was one of the major voices of what was going on in New Jersey government. And, he was a star in his own right. And it was one of my very best friends. And I talk to him every day. And it's going to be difficult going forward on this.
I got to tell you, what you mentioned about in that hot scorching sun in 2019, I mean, this is a guy who wears cargo shorts to jury duty. So when I read that about Matt, I said, good for him. Why sweat your ass off when you're going to be there for hours on end in a process that sometimes is never ending? But again, that just sort of stood out for me about, I think, how genuine he was. And you want to get the job done, but listen, let's do it comfortably, right?
Yeah, and Matt just didn't suffer fools very easily. He, which is a great thing. It's a great thing for a journalist to have. He he would, if he saw something that he thought was wrong and he thought was that he was cynical about, he talked about it and brought it out, and he asked really tough questions and went after really interesting, tough stories. And yeah, we were all sitting out there. I remember that standoff was so hot. It was like 98 degrees in Trenton, and Trenton, you're just out. There's no trees or anything. It's just like a city. You're just out in the elements. And he's like, well, screw this. I'm going to put shorts on, and if they want to make us sit out here, I'm going to be at least be comfortable and not let them not let it get to me. So that was a great moment in Matt. But he had a lot of those. He was tough as nails.
No, absolutely, absolutely. What stood out for you, Brent, about his work specifically? I know obviously he covered the Christie campaign, or if you want to call it that, when he ran for president. But obviously, listen, he asked a lot of tough questions. And as I just said during the testimonial, I mean, you saw elected officials, his peers, not a bad word to say about someone. And again, in a business when it's easy to dislike you, I know this firsthand. It just, you could see the love pouring out for Matt, and really, I think how determined he was, but how consistent he was too. What stood out for you in recent years about his work?
Yeah, he was certainly one of, and if not the biggest chronicler of Chris Christie's time as governor and presidential candidate. He was with Christie at every major event, went with him to Iowa and New Hampshire. He wrote a newsletter about Christie's latest presidential campaign. He spoke frequently with the governor, and he was kind of like the person who gave voice to Chris Christie's campaign through coverage. And me and him covered the first 6-7 years of the Murphy administration. So he was one of the people in New Jersey politics who really shed light on all that was going on. And he, again, during COVID, me and him were the people that went to all those briefings and sat there in front of the governor and asking as many tough questions as they would let us. Sometimes, you had to rush to get your questions in. It was such a weird time, but in many ways we had a weird bond because while everyone else was at home, we were out in the field, going out, trying to get answers to these questions. And he really was someone that I keep saying he really did. He gave voice to Jersey politics.
Now that you mentioned that, I mean, really, it's 5 years later. It just feels like yesterday, though, man. Like, really, right around this time, we were home. A lot of us were home. I mean, I was doing this podcast at home when it premiered on June 1st, but you were out in the field along with Matt and others. Take us back to, I mean, how scary was it for you and everybody else out in the field, obviously, as you were covering COVID? We really didn't know what we knew now, obviously, 5 years later. But how scary was that for you guys?
It was weird because right from the start, Murphy started doing in the early press briefings we were packed together before we knew what social distancing was. So there were like a bunch of reporters in these chairs next to each other. And then we didn't know about masks or anything. Everything was like happening in real time. And then when the world shut down, when Murphy put down all his shutdown orders, we would venture out onto the roads in our cars, and there was no one else there. It takes me usually about an hour to get to Trenton. It took me like 20 minutes to get there from Spotswood, where I live in Middlesex County. And it was just odd. It was like being out in The Walking Dead, and then you would get to this cavernous ballroom where Murphy would hold his briefings, and it was you, meaning me, and a few other reporters, and wearing masks and sitting there handing us microphones on sticks and talking to the governor and the health commissioner and the state police commissioner. And it was a weird, surreal time, and I can't say that I miss it.
Without a doubt, I think none of us miss it, even 5 years later, for sure. Yeah. Folks, it's 5:39 here on the East Coast. If you just joined us live, like, comment, and share tonight's episode here. Live with me is NJ Advanced Media politics reporter Brent Johnson, joining us live here on Real Talk. Again, shout out to his family. Our sincerest condolences and our thoughts and prayers are with him and certainly in them during this difficult time. Now, again, Brent, was he still covering Jersey politics in recent months, or was he transitioning away from that?
He was. He covered it until about last year, and then they decided, because of all the attention that the presidential race was getting, they put Matt, because Matt had just done a Chris Christie newsletter on Christie's campaign. It was a twice-a-week account of Christie's campaign, and they said, well, you've gotten to know presidential politics, and you covered Trump a little bit, so he started doing multiple posts a day on the presidential campaign, first Biden, Trump, and then Harris, Trump. And in recent months, he stayed on covering the beginning of the Trump administration, second Trump administration. And there was talk about maybe moving him back to do some other things, but obviously we'll never get to know what he would have done next.
Definitely a loss for all of us here in New Jersey media. Again, Matt Arco was 39, folks. And Brent, let's get to the news here again. Great dedication to your friend. I'm sure you'd be very, very proud of you for sure. Folks, for a lot of you out there that subscribe to different newsletters, I know I do. I like to be in the know, obviously, as a political junkie. But I gotta tell you, man, one of the good ones in New Jersey is right here. What makes New Jersey run? There, that's obviously edited by our guest tonight, Brent Johnson. Let's get to that a little bit, man. Let's get to this governor's race that's been pretty fickle lately. Again, I have been following your work for a while. I've always had an enormous amount of respect for it. But I didn't meet you physically until February when I ran into you at Rider University during the debates that were hosted by the New Jersey Globe and David Wallstein and company for both the Republican and Democrat parties collectively. And I got to tell you, listen, back February seems like a lifetime ago in this governor's race. We'll start with the Democrats first. I think during that debate, Mayor Ross Barack and Steve Sweeney looked the best during that debate. But in the weeks since then, though, Brent, I mean, I got to tell you, Mikey Sherrill, who seems to be maybe the more establishment candidate, is still leading a lot of polls very narrowly. But someone who's really, really come on strongly has been Stephen Fulop, mayor of Jersey City, nearby where I live in Hudson County. His latest ad, again, I can call balls and strikes fairly. His latest ad, I think, is the best I've seen of all the candidates lately. And, Steve, to his credit, I think, listen, he's coming out all swinging. He's got none to lose at this point. But I would argue that coming up, there's two big events. There's a town hall, obviously, with NJ Spotlight News, and the next round of debates with the New Jersey Globe. I think Mikey's got to put some distance between her and Steve, because I think it's really a Steve Fulop and a Mikey Sherrill race right now. Is that fair to say?
That's what it looks like. The first major poll in months in this race came out last week, and it showed the Democratic side really tightly knit. You had Sherrill being what is I would consider a soft front runner. She was at 17%, and Fulop was not far behind her at 12%. And then not far behind him was Sean Spiller, the teachers union president, at 10%. And then Ras Baraka, the New York mayor, and Josh Gottheimer, the congressman, at 9%. And then right at 7%, not far behind that, is the former state Senate president, Steve Sweeney. So really, no one's completely out of the race. There's no one polling at 2 or 0. And but right now, it looks like Sherrill, who has a lot of the establishment support, a lot of top name Democrats supporting her. And Fulop is running kind of the Rage Against the Machine campaign, saying, I'm the outsider who's going to, lash out against party bosses. So this is a real race. I mean, it's a real race. Like, as we're going into the final 5 weeks, I couldn't sit here. I tell you, maybe Sherrill's a slight favorite, but I can't 100% say that I think it's Sherrill's to lose.
I mean, we'll definitely get to predictions in a little bit, but and just for our audience at home, Brent, that aren't familiar with sort of like the dynamics of this, obviously coming up, NGA president, former mayor of Montclair, Sean Spiller, will not be available at the debate due to not qualifying for matching funds. In layman's terms, for everyone out there maybe isn't familiar what matching funds means, what does that entail, and why is that so important in a race like this?
He's a very interesting case because matching funds, a long time ago, many decades ago, the ELEC, which is the New Jersey Election Law Enforcement Commission, set up a system where if you agreed to limit your spending to a certain amount, the state would give you matching funds in state money if you're a gubernatorial candidate. So if you raise X amount of money, the state would then give you a matching amount. And that was the idea, was to try and keep big money out of politics. Now we know, obviously, 40 years later, big money is all about politics. Politics is full of it. So it's a bit different now, but Spiller is an interesting case because he has not raised pretty much any money on his own. All his money comes through a super PAC supported by the teachers union, the New Jersey Education Association. So he has like $35 million supporting him from the teachers union, but technically he didn't raise that money himself. So he does not qualify for the debate stage.
It's kind of alarming, I think, especially if you're a teacher or administrator or anybody working in education right now, though, Brent. I mean, the idea of your membership dues going to a single candidate. I mean, how has that not raised more alarms?
It has. You've heard. We spoke to a number of my colleague Riley Yates and I did a story on this. We have spoken to teachers who are annoyed at this and feel like the wool is being pulled over their eyes a little bit. But you also have many teachers. There's 20,000 members of that union, and you have many teachers who are saying, "Well, he's going to be the voice of our union, the voice of teachers." So there are many that support him. There are also some who are Republicans who probably won't vote in their Democratic primary at all. So his candidacy is really fascinating. Like it's controversial. But he's also pushing a message that he's an outsider, even though he's the leader of this big union. So it's kind of like indicative of the machine and not machine debate going on in both parties.
No, definitely. And let's just sort of break down the rest of the field here. I mean, obviously, former State Senate President Steve Sweeney certainly has a lot of the South Jersey, I think, contingency behind him. But I mean, I got to tell you, man, as someone who had a lot of objections about what happened during COVID 5 years ago, again, when I hear him say, well, I'm the guy from Trenton, I'm the guy that knows how government works. Well, again, Brent, I mean, I don't want to go down this rabbit hole, but, like, I'm not vaccinated. And the idea that, I know how I was treated during that time period. And Steve Sweeney pretty much acquiesced to Phil Murphy completely during COVID. And pretty much, him and Craig Coffin, I think, are kind of complicit in keeping the state shut down, I think, longer than it should have been. So when people look at Steve Sweeney, sure, you're the guy in Trenton that's been in there. But you also, again, when we think about property taxes being the highest in the nation and other things, you also had a hand in that because you were the Senate president, not just for Phil Murphy, but for Chris Christie, the gas tax, tolls. So, I mean, it's kind of hard to clean your hands of this when you were part of it too, though, right?
That's one of the things I've heard that is both a benefit and a detriment for Sweeney, both in the primary and the general election. To some, his resume would show that he was a leader for many years and that he was one of the top Democrats in the state for more than a decade. But in the primary, a lot of Democrats didn't like that he worked hand in hand with Chris Christie, even though he had a bipartisan arrangement to try and work in a bipartisan fashion. But some people thought he enabled Chris Christie, especially public worker unions who had their benefits changed. And then if you go to the general election, you have a lot of Republicans, and that's probably what cost him his state Senate seat. He would be the first to tell you that a lot of the anti-COVID backlash and the anti-working with Murphy backlash really hurt him, and why Ed Durr, a truck driver with no name recognition and very little fundraising, was able to oust him in 2021 out of nowhere. None of us had any idea that was coming, and there was just a wave of support for Durr against Sweeney because of some of those things. So, what's good for him could also be bad for him.
No, certainly. And certainly, Ross Baraka, probably the most progressive in the field, maybe next to Steve Fulop.
Yep.
And even Josh Gottheimer, the representative out there in Bergen County, kind of running like a moderate Democrat, center-left guy, kind of what Bergen County is to some extent. Nowhere near as progressive, obviously, as Baraka is and Fulop. And maybe Mikey Sherrill, too, though. Sort of rounding it out there. Do you see Gottheimer, even though you saw some ads and it was interesting? I'm a guy that kind of like dabbles in AI a little bit. Yeah, that's great to have an ad, certainly with the message of like, hey, I want to fight back against Trump. Again, I don't want to sound like that, like a Karen brand or that old guy screaming at kids to get off my lawn. But I mean, we just had, a guy running for president last summer who was a former president who nearly got assassinated. And again, listen, as a pro wrestling fan, I love violence like anybody, but does that optic of violence against the president of the United States, is that a good look for an ad?
I think, well, it definitely drew attention. It was kind of a catching thing that people didn't expect to see a shirtless Josh Gottheimer throwing punches at the president. It's probably why you didn't see him knocking him out in the clip, though, because that probably would have been a bridge too far for violence. So it's certainly a polarizing ad, if you want to put it that way. Him and Sweeney are also trying to run an interesting lane in the primary, because in the primary you're kind of attracting base voters.
Yeah,
you want to attract, and he's going after people. It seems like in the general election a bit with saying he's going to lower your taxes. Sweeney the same way. So we'll see how that plays out. But yeah, that's probably why you didn't see Trump falling to the ground in that video. Yeah,
no, certainly. And again, I think when you look at this field, probably the most competitive Democrat field I've seen at least in my adult life. With it. And again, I'll sort of put a prediction out there. Like, we're sports fans, so I'm into betting all the time. I would say probably, maybe turnout isn't great because it's primary season, but maybe Mikey Sherrill 18%, Steve Fulop 16%, Ross Baraka 15%. That's how I see the field, man.
Yeah, that looks to be those are the top three. But it really is anyone's game. I mean, we're talking about 1 or 2 percentage points and one little swing over the final few weeks. You talk about Gottheimer too. Gottheimer is known as a fundraising machine. Yeah. And in the final few weeks, if he really wants to throw up millions of dollars in ads in the New York and Philadelphia market, that could help him a big, that's what people pay attention to at the end, whether it be online ads or television ads. The more you see these candidates, because you're right, it's a low turnout primary. Most people probably don't even know there's a governor's race going on. We have a state of 9 million people, and I'm sure some might not even be aware. I've heard jokes that some people still think Chris Christie's governor. So
Oh,
it's
God help us. Oh my God, Jesus.
there's a lot of things could change in the final weeks, especially on the Democratic side.
No, certainly. And listen, to your point about ads, I mean, whether it's watching the NBA playoffs, watching Major League Baseball, the Stanley Cup playoffs, or even streaming platforms, whenever there's ads, I've seen political ads more than ever
Yeah.
in recent months. It's crazy. So now on the Republican side, obviously the field has narrowed. I think it's really a two-person race still, Brent. I think it's between former Assemblyman Jack Chiarelli, former candidate in 2021, and NJ 101.5 radio personality, Bill Spady. I think it's very much like the Democrats. I think coming up this month at these town halls with NJ Spotlight News and, of course, the debate with the New Jersey Globe, it's make or break now. You have to be able to separate yourself from the competition. I think that Jack, listen, I think Jack kind of has the same problem Mikey Sherrill does. Jack is looked upon as like sort of more of the establishment candidate. A lot of, again, there's no line per se, at least in, well, we know there isn't a line in the Democrat primary.
There's no line at all this primary.
Oh, okay, so whether it's establishment or county parties that maybe have given kind of like blessing of the candidate, Jack seems to have that advantage over Bill, and Jack's been going around the state consistently. I think Bill's kind of concentrated in Morris County, Monmouth, and Oceans. I don't think that's enough. I think I just see this race not as tight as the Democrat one.
Yeah, I mean, at least that poll from last week showed that it's pretty much 42 Chitterelli and 24 Spadia. And there's about a third undecided. So, I mean, Spady would need to swing all the undecideds his way to really pull this out. And, so much has been focused on the president's endorsement, whether Donald Trump's going to step in and endorse someone. There's been a lot of behind the scenes maneuvering for Trump allies with people who are aligned with Chitterelli and people who are aligned with Spady, trying to get the president to jump in. Spady, some say Spady's camp stands to benefit the most because if he gets Trump's endorsement, then that kind of makes up some of the difference. And Chitterelli, while he would welcome Trump's endorsement, I think he'd be fine if Trump stayed neutral. Trump has colored so much of this Republican primary because like I said, the primary voters are your base Republican voters, and they are very big fans of the president. So you want to try and appeal to them as much as possible because those are the people who are voting. And we've seen Jack and Spadia both criticize the president in the past, but they both are now running significantly pro-Trump campaigns. Spadia has said that he's been with him since the escalator, he said, even though there has been times he has criticized him. And Chitterelli has said what he's seen as a journey on Trump, where he used to criticize Trump. He once called him a charlatan who wasn't fit to be president. But last time he ran for governor, he kind of straddled the line a little bit. And this time he's been much more vocal about his support of Trump. And he's kind of compares himself to J.D. Vance, saying, I've been on an evolution with him. So, but right now, this is definitely Chitterelli's race to lose. If Spadia pulls it out, that would be a significant upset based on what we're seeing 5 weeks out.
No, I agree with you. And I think that race is probably like a 45-35. And again, no disrespect to State Senator Bramnick and former Inglewood Cliffs Mayor Myra Kranjak. I mean, they're probably going to be in the single digits at some point, and maybe you'll have some undecideds or other candidates or whatever. I think it's like 45-35 Chitterelli on June 10th. That's at least my guess. Do you see it the same way?
Yeah, I mean, again, barring Trump getting involved, and I mean, because if the president gets involved and endorses Spadia, that doesn't guarantee that Spadia is going to win. Last year, we saw Trump get involved in the U.S. Senate primary, and that didn't swing that way for Serrano Glasner. But right now it looks like it's Chitterelli's, and that's saying something. Because you mentioned someone like John Bramnick, who's been a longtime state senator. Yeah. He's just running a campaign that's willing to criticize Trump, and in a primary, that's not necessarily the greatest thing. Even though Democrats will tell you he'd be the Republican they'd be most nervous to face in the fall, but I don't think he'd get that far based on the campaign he's running.
No, I agree with you, and I think again it'll be interesting because I anticipate that on the morning of June 11th, it's going to be Mikey Sherrill versus Jack Chiarelli coming up for November 4th. And I got to tell you, I'm not auditioning to be an operative, but Brent, you got to believe that if you're Jack Chiarelli, the first ad you got to run on the morning of June 11th is like, hey, Mikey Sherrill is running on making New Jersey more affordable. Mikey, why is New Jersey not affordable? And I think that's the slippery slope that Mikey Sherrill has to walk, though, right, Brent? Because in essence, she can't throw Governor Phil Murphy under the bus, where her and I would argue a lot of the far-left Democrats in Trenton have made New Jersey unaffordable. And I get that, the talking point for Mikey Sherrill and Democrats in New Jersey is going to be like, well, we have to fight back against Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Newsflash, folks, the reason we have the highest property taxes in the country and the gas tax is up 44 cents per gallon and the tolls are going up, well, went up already, it's not Republicans. It's Democrats that control the legislature for the last 20 years. It just seems like, Brent, a lot of people don't want to sort of say that out loud.
Well, that's what Democrats are going to be running against, the headwinds of 20 years of Democratic rule. The state legislature has been controlled by Democrats for 22 years. And the governor's office has belonged to Democrats for the last 8 years. Now, historically in New Jersey, we tend to go back and forth between parties when it comes to the governor's office. You had, Christy Whitman, or Jim Florio went to Christy Whitman, went to Jim McGreevey, and then John Corzine. But then that went back to Chris Christie and then back to Phil Murphy. So historically, if we're going by the statistics in the past, this is a Republican year in New Jersey. We haven't had one party serve 3 straight terms since 1961, which is 3 years before the Beatles landed in America and 1 year before the New York Mets, my team, became a baseball team. So, that's a major significant historical headwind to run against. The difference here is that Donald Trump is like a president we've never had before in the past. And they are hoping that Trump's popularity within the general election, not with the primary, might dip to the point where maybe it helps the Democrats. But that's a major roll of the dice. People, I feel, tend to vote more for state issues on when it comes to governor races. And so that's what we're going to have to wait to see what happens in the fall. But those are kind of what's going on in the background.
I agree with you. And just to sort of piggyback on that, again, if the economy is maybe improving towards the fall, because let's be honest, man, during the summer months, we're happy being down the shore. We're happy going to ball games. We're happy being outside. I think a lot of political junkies like you and I are following this hourly. A lot of New Jerseyans aren't. So the attention span tends to sort of synchronize itself after Labor Day.
Yes.
And I would argue that I think that's when the candidates have to really kind of go, the last rush going into November 4th. Now, again, if the cost of crude oil is going down, Brent, and the economy maybe is picking up a little bit. Obviously, we're seeing manufacturing jobs coming back to the States, which they are, and other things. And again, there's an optic here, and we'll see if Jack capitalizes on it. I mean, Brett, the idea that ICE is coming into New Jersey and other states, and they're rounding up illegals, and in many cases, many criminal illegals, that optic matters. And for a lot of New Jerseyans, again, whether or not the sanctuary state or city narrative is going to work, I don't know, but that optic meant something. It's the reason why the 45th president became the 47th president. Now, again, to your point, yes, it's about state issues, but at the end of the day, it's about, whether or not, ICE is doing its job, whether or not we can get property taxes down, energy prices, which we'll segue into in a moment. I think these are the issues that are going to resonate most. And to your point, Democrats have controlled the legislature for 22 years. It's not Republicans' fault that we have our property taxes are the highest in the country. It's not Republicans that, the budget is getting as big as Grimace. I mean, let's be honest, bro. I mean, it's not Republicans' fault.
Yeah, what they always used to say, all politics is local. And I think in governor races that tends to be the case. What's different is in the Trump era, a lot of politics have become national. All politics become national. So there will be a Trump factor in this. This is the first major race since Trump has become president, meaning this in Virginia. These are the only 2 governor's races going on in the country right now. So there'll kind of be a bit of a litmus test heading into next year's primary, or next year's midterms. But yes, a big thing that's going to hurt the Democrats. You see Republicans harping on it now, is the energy prices are also going up in the state utility costs. And, you're going to have 2 messages really going on in this campaign. On the Republican side, you're going to see, yes, taxes, energy costs, they're all out of control because Democrats have been in control for 20 years. We've had the governor's office in Democratic hands for 8 years. It's time for change. This is the year to do it.
Certainly is.
On the Democratic side, you're going to see, do we want someone who's a clone of Donald Trump controlling? So you're going to see Trump versus the New Jersey affordability thing. And that's really what's going to, and you've already seen Jack put out an ad about these utility costs. So you're already starting to see it in this race.
I got to tell you, I mean, seeing Jack borrow one of my lines, it's not about pronouns. It's about property taxes. Like I say that all the time. I'm like, Jack, I'll give you that one. I won't collect any royalties on that. But moving on to energy, since you mentioned it, and I think that's another important issue during this election cycle that maybe a lot of New Jerseyans don't know about. And certainly with the primary coming up, and I would argue that a lot of the incumbent Democrats in the state assembly have to be feeling a little nervous here because it's almost crunch time. June 1st is right around the corner, literally in a few weeks. And energy prices will go up. How is that so significant right now? And again, for our audience that maybe isn't familiar with the process, Why is it why does it seem like it's like the fourth quarter, 2-minute warning, and this hasn't been resolved?
Yeah, it is. You definitely, I hear behind the scenes, Democrats are definitely worried about this, even more so than property taxes, because right now it isn't much of an issue in the primary because you're attracting primary voters, and these increases haven't happened yet. You're going to see them over the summer when people are running the air conditioner, and they're going to see the 17% hike, or even 20% in some cases, on their utility bills. So it's going to become real for them, and that's right as we head into the fall months when the election people start paying attention in September and October. So that's going to be a real issue and something Democrats are going to be on the defensive about. And their hope is that there'll be crosswinds from Trump, and that there'll be something they can hang their hats on there. But you never know what's going to be happening in September. Like, a few months is an eon, or eons in political time. A million things could change.
Brent, we hear about the budget, obviously, and for our audience that isn't familiar with what the process is, obviously, under the state constitution, a budget has to be passed by the legislature and signed by the governor by 11:59 p.m. on June 30th. If it is not, certainly at 12:01 a.m. on July the 1st, a state can consequently shut down. We've seen that. I know in recent years, I remember 2017,
Yep.
Chris Christie, in 2006 under John Corzine. In recent years, it seems like the legislature and Phil Murphy have really gotten down to the wire, and they've passed the budget maybe with days to go. What are you seeing right now as the biggest obstacles during this budget? Because it seemed like after, whether it was a surplus or just crazy spending the last few years, now there's a hiring freeze. We need to kind of tighten our belts. Very different language than we saw 8 years ago. What are some of the biggest, I guess, I would have talking points about where Republican Democrats are different about this budget this season?
Well, a state government shutdown certainly isn't out of the realm of possibility. A few of I reported on this in the newsletter a few weeks ago. A few of my sources have said, the ingredients are there that a state government shutdown could happen. No one really wants it, but that doesn't mean it's not going to happen. We've had a shutdown threat pretty much every year since that shutdown in 2017. And the reason is that, New Jersey's budget has to be balanced. You have to have a balanced budget by that deadline on July 1st. Otherwise, the governor can order a shutdown. And right now, New Jersey's budget is starting to see a bit of a fiscal cliff forming on the horizon, that they've been spending a lot of money, and now there's a spending deficit. And Murphy is asking for a few tax hikes to offset that. Democrats running in the legislature don't want to do that. Murphy's not running for election, and they are. And so I don't think there's going to be much of appetite for that, but they're going to have to find money somewhere else, some other form of cuts. So it is, and we still don't know what's going to happen with Medicaid cuts from DC, and there's a lot of things that could happen. This is a really uncertain budget cycle. And then if you talk to people, they'll say next year is even going to be worse. So, good luck next year to whoever inherits this mess.
Now, when we talk about the budget specifically, obviously, I think the Senate chairman, right, Paul Sarlo, has his own beliefs about in the sense of where cuts should come. And to your point, yes, I think obviously it's really contingent on what happens in DC. But here in New Jersey, it just seems like it might be not a very fun summer when it comes to what's getting taxed. And what's been the feedback you're hearing from sources about the governor kind of taking this position? I mean, again, he's not running for re-election. He's out in January. At the end of the day, I mean, it almost sounds like, well, to the hell with everything. I'm leaving, so it doesn't really matter. But what are you hearing about legislators behind the scenes that are concerned that, hey, this could really hurt Dems, not just in the governor's race, but obviously in the assembly races where, again, Democrats have a pretty good majority?
I think, Murphy has painted it that he has been spending to try and increase funding for pensions, funding for schools, and that the spending, while his spending has ballooned under his belt, it has been for good reasons. And that now they're seeing where they can't be spending like this forever and they have to pull it in. And one way to provide more revenue for the budget, instead of cuts, you can raise revenue by raising taxes. He wants to raise taxes on alcohol, cigarettes, guns, and what critics are calling fun taxes, things like bowling alleys, laser tag, batting cages. I don't expect to see everything go through. Democrats, I mean, there's also a proposed increase in the taxes on online gaming. I could see something like that go through, maybe some real estate taxes. I don't foresee the fun taxes going through, or the gun taxes. I don't know about alcohol and cigarettes. Cigarettes are seen by a vice as some people, so that might go through. Alcohol might be harder to palate. So I do expect to see some of these not make it through. But then the other thing on top of that is they're going to have to find cuts in some other way to make up the difference, unless they're going to totally revamp the budget.
Brent, a little about you now, real quick here. But what was your epiphany, or what really drove you to pursue journalism as a career?
My father was the voice of Rutgers sports on radio for while I was growing up. He did football and basketball, so I used to love going in. His name is Bruce Johnson, so he did Rutgers football and basketball from the 80s and 90s into the
No,
2000s.
I remember.
Yeah, yeah. And so I thought I wanted to do that too. So I used to go into the booth with him, and I would go on trips sometimes with him. And then I got to Rutgers, go Scarlet Knights. In 2002, I graduated from East Brunswick High School, which is where I grew up. I'm a Central Jersey guy. And I got to Rutgers, and I went to RSU, which is the student radio station. And I went on my first broadcast, and I got tongue tied. I was like, I had to suddenly describe all the action going back and forth. And it was so difficult to do. So I went down the hallway, which was the Daily Targum, which is the student newspaper. And
I remember. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I started covering sports, and I was the beat writer for football and basketball for a few years. I covered some entertainment, and I was the managing editor of the Targum. And I really haven't known anything else since then. I got hired by the Star Ledger out of college, and I covered sports for them for the first few years. And so I've never really looked like it was because of my dad, and I thought I wanted to do radio, and I realized I wasn't going to be very good at it. So I was like, well, I can write, I guess. So, and somehow I managed to make it my career, which is amazing in many respects.
No, listen, you're a great writer. I follow your work like attentively. And again, you continue to produce great work. Let me ask you this: as a journalist, and obviously I think the sphere of journalism has changed, right? I would argue in the last 10, 20 years. One of my mentors, not sure if you know this name, but his name is Al Sullivan. He's a big name up here in Hudson County. He wrote for the Jersey Journal, Hudson Reporter for a long time, considered my mentor. And, when we think about journalists, though, Brent, to your point, obviously, you graduated, went to Rutgers, hoorah, obviously, and you dive right into it. Wrote for the Daily Targum, then started writing. But I think that, for the most part, we've seen, unfortunately, the extinction of sort of the print newspaper. And again, I'm a guy who still reads physically the newspaper. I'm a sports guy, so I read it from the back first, and then I work my way to the front. But I still enjoy reading the newspaper. Obviously, that has become almost a dinosaur in this spectrum. And I think also to add on to it, I mean, there seems to be this sort of optic out there, Brent, and you've been entrenched in it for a lot longer than I have been, but that, New Jerseyans or Americans collectively just say, hey, it's the liberal media, there's a bias there, and people are starting to sort of lose faith in media for different reasons. When you talk to your peers in the field, or when you're seeing this sort of narrative on social media or in comments and editorials, how does that make you feel, again, as someone who's been in this business for a while, writing and now obviously doing commentary as well?
Yeah, I've seen, I always like to say I'm 41. So I started working for the Targum when I was 18 in 2002. And back then we didn't have a website. We didn't have social media. Facebook was still 2 years away from existing. So I've seen the industry change, going from a very print focused thing into something that we've had to learn how to exist in an online sphere. And it's been jarring that I feel like the kind of person who both can tell you about when Blockbuster existed, but also can tell you how to use their phone to download apps and things of that nature. So, I went from Blockbuster to TikTok. So it's weird. And along that way, journalism has become less focused on black and white and facts. And you can kind of choose your own media. If you are right-leaning, you have your own right-leaning sources. If you're left-leaning, you have your left-leaning sources, and somewhere in the middle is what gets lost. And it's tough because everyone is looking for your biases to see if you have biases. And I really do try and be as neutral as possible. I have no skin in this game. I don't benefit one way or the other as a journalist, whether a Democrat or a Republican gets elected. And that's a harder thing to be these days, because you will have people who argue that it's impossible to be neutral anymore because you have to take one side. The one side is better than the other. And if you don't do that, then, you're not helping the Republic. And so the old school style shoe leather journalism that I practice and try and do it's getting harder to find. And it's a weird media landscape also because there's not a shared culture like there was when we were growing up, when you had everyone would tune into channel 2, 4, 7 news.
Yeah.
Now it's like you can choose your own fighter. You can tune in the news wherever you want to tune in. So you're fighting for fewer eyeballs and people who have a strong sense of what they want to read and say.
Brent, and to be fair, listen, and I say it all the time here. I tell it like it is. I mean, you do call it down the middle. You call balls and strikes pretty well. I can't say the same for a lot of our colleagues in the field. I mean, it's a very liberal-leaning, echo chamber here in media, and that's one of the things I would argue that I think it's what made people lose faith in some extent with media. I think it's the reason where maybe independent media has kind of thrived in recent years. Podcasts. Listen, a lot of people will tell you, Fernando Uribe is not a journalist. He's an opinion journalist. He's whatever, but he's not a journalist in the conventional sense. And I just think that definition has changed because, again, technology,
It has, yeah.
to your point, social media, and I'll do you one better since you mentioned Blockbuster. Listen, I was a Columbia Records guy. I was a Columbia House guy, okay?
Yeah,
I gave like 7 different addresses to get CDs, and I'm still waiting for that bill to come to my door, right? But to your point, yes, I think it's changed a lot. But there's a reason why podcasting continues to thrive in this spectrum here. Not because we don't believe media. I think there are elements of media it's hard to believe, both right and left. But I think podcasting, to some extent, I think is perhaps maybe the future of media for the foreseeable future, bro.
Yeah, we're certainly seeing where I went from being a daily print journalist to now I mostly write a newsletter. And we're now doing a video series on talking to the gubernatorial candidates. People are getting their news in different ways, whether people like it or not. Podcasts and newsletters and TikTok videos, they're becoming the new way people consume media. And if you don't meet people where they are, you will no longer see those people.
Absolutely. Brent, you've been a gentleman. I know you've been out a little longer than you would like, but let's just wrap it up here shortly. But, again, as we continue on with election season. Obviously, this primary, it'll be interesting about turnout because to your point, a lot of people don't know that there is a primary this year. A lot of people don't know that there's a governor's race, obviously. And certainly all 80 state assembly seats are up for grabs. Obviously, Democrats have a pretty good majority there, 52 to 28 right now. I just think to your point about affordability, Democrats look a little vulnerable about that here in New Jersey. I think this is as good a chance for Republicans to be shave into that lead, not flip the assembly. That's not realistic. I mean, listen, I live in Hudson County. You live in Middlesex County. They're as blue as Windex. So I think it's fair to say that those assembly seats are pretty safe, but there's a lot of vulnerable Dems in northern Jersey, central Jersey. Yes, folks, there is central Jersey, and not just north and south, and South Jersey as well, where maybe Republicans, again, it depends on Jack, obviously, what he can carry, but Republicans can maybe shave 7, 8 seats off that majority for Democrats this November. Is that a realistic goal, you think?
Yeah, it happened in 2021. The last time Jack ran against Murphy, you saw that the Republicans picked up a number of seats. Now the Democrats won them back 2 years later. But yeah, I mean, nothing's off the table this year. I'm honest when I mean I really don't know what's going to happen. Certainly in the Democratic primary and in the general election. We could be looking at a Republican governor. I don't know if we'll see a Republican assembly. And even if we do get a Republican assembly, which is unlikely, you'll still have the Democratic Senate. So they would still be fighting back and forth. But yeah, I mean, is this could be a Republican year where they retake the governor's office? Absolutely. And I certainly know Democrats who are definitely not running confident, meaning they know that's on the table.
I mean, not to put them on blast, but any vulnerable Democrats that come to mind in the assembly races?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, you've seen there's a few districts that could go back and forth. The 3rd district, there's the 4th district, the 30. I mean, these are, I don't know of any, they're big names that people would recognize, but there's always a number of battlegrounds. To your point, to flip the assembly, you would need to cut into not just battlegrounds. You would have to have some surprises. So not out of the realm of possibility, but certainly more likely to get a Republican governor than a Republican assembly.
Oh, certainly. And again, maybe if they can shave into it and then come 2027, obviously all the legislative seats are up for grabs, not just all 80 assembly seats, but all 40 state Senate seats. And obviously those races are going to be interesting as well. Folks, here, if you just join us live right now, the politics reporter for NJ Events Media, Brent Johnson, our guest tonight here on Real Talk. Folks, like, comment, share, and of course, subscribe to Jersey First TV tonight for tonight's episode. We've got to know Brent, the journalist. We've got to know Brent, the fellow Scarlet Knight, but let's get to know Brent Johnson, the regular guy, the dad, right? So quick lightning round with you, Brent, and sure. Obviously let's go here. I think in one topic I definitely wanted to pick your brain about favorite MLB team.
Oh, I'm a New York Mets fan through and through.
Okay.
My family, a longtime Mets fans.
Big Yankee fan here. The
Yep.
Yankees are the Yankees. They'll break my heart like my Cowboys do, and my Lakers. More on that later. But what prompted fandom with the Mets and your favorite New York Met?
So both my grandfathers, my dad's mom and my mom's mom, were Brooklyn Dodger fans, and when they left for LA, they weren't going to switch over to the Yankees. No offense to your Bombers, so they became Mets fans. My dad was a Mets fan from birth. So not from birth. He was born in 1952, so he was 10 years old when he chose the Mets. But I had no choice. Meaning my brother and I are diehard Mets fans, and it's a way of it like teaches you a lot about life. Being a Mets fan, it like teaches you to accept loss and adversity. So my favorite Met is Pete Alonso, who I was very happy.
Wow. Okay. How about maybe a more classical Met?
More classical. Okay, so Gary Carter is my all-time childhood hero. My 1-year-old son is named Carter in honor of Gary Carter, and our dog is named Hodges in honor of Gil Hodges.
An amazing ball player. God rest his soul. Gary Carter was truly amazing. Good start for the Amazings this season. Obviously, signing Juan Soto away from the Yankees was obviously Uncle Stevie is not messing around. He is spending money. We're seeing obviously what's going to happen around Citi Field in the coming years. Obviously, with some commerce, some things that'll make fans. It'll be almost an event to go to Citi Field. Obviously, with what's being built there. Obviously, tough division with the Phillies the Braves. Obviously, where do you see right now? Obviously, the Mets are off to a great start. Very much contrary to what last year was, they off to a horrific start. Got hot really, really, really after June 1st, and we all saw the amazing run that they had. Where do you see some deficiency, though?
Well, they've lost the last 2 games, and you've seen where the bullpen hasn't been as terrific as they were early on. We haven't seen Juan Soto be Juan Soto yet. I know you Yankee fans, he's not hitting, and he's hitting in front of Pete Alonso, whom I love very dearly, but Aaron Judge is a freak of nature in many respects. And, you're not hitting in front of Aaron Judge anymore. So we need to see Soto blossom, but I like this team. I think they're gritty. And the problem is the American League, where the Yankees are clearly the best team the National League has. You pick the Padres, the Dodgers, even the Braves and the Phillies. It's not going to be an easy league to get through. So the Mets have a lot of hurdles, but this will be a really fun season. The first month was really wonderful to watch.
No, it was. And Brent, as a Yankee fan, I'm not one of those Yankee fans. I call into WFAN a lot. I love sports talk. I listen to it when I'm doing work at home. Mm-hmm. I don't hate the Mets. If the Mets do well, great, cool. When the Mets won the World Series in 2015, I mean, as someone who worked in nightlife and hospitality during grad school, I love seeing bars, restaurants being full. If the Mets win, that's great. As a Yankee fan, it's no skin off my back just because of the success. Not lately, obviously, not since really the first year of Barack Obama's term. I mean, that's how far back it's been for the Yankees.
That's true.
But if the Mets do well, I don't know. I never understand that as a Yankee fan. If they do well, okay, great. We still have more titles. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I'm not an anti-Yankee guy either. My best friend from high school, Josh, he is a diehard Yankee fan, and as long there tends to be a big brother, little brother. Sometimes there's an inferiority complex among Mets fans. I can't say the same about the Phillies and the Braves. I wish them nothing but not winning.
Same here. I hate everything Philadelphia. I'm with you, brother.
I have no problem rooting against the Phillies and all things Chase Utley.
No.
But yeah, the thing I hope the Yankees. I can't say if the Yankees and Mets get to the World Series, I'll be rooting for the Yankees.
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Obviously, the difference is this time with the Mets. We always assume we're going to lose, like Mets fans. In 2000, when my beloved 2000 New York Mets,
great team. That was a great team.
Yeah, very good team. And Mike Piazza is another one of my favorite players. And when that team faced the Yankees, I was expecting to lose. I was like, I do not expect to beat Jeter, Rivera, and those Yankees. But right now, I think the Mets could take on anybody, and that's what's a little different. And it's kind of weird for Mets fans. We don't really know this feeling. We're not quite sure whether it's real or not. So
and listen, and Uncle Stevie wants to spend money. Uncle Stevie will go to all lengths, and I think that's very different than the Wilpons, where a lot of Met fans are still traumatized from those years of the Wilpons for sure. Favorite NFL team?
Giants, New York Giants. I'm not one of those Mets Jets fans. I'm a Giants.
Okay. Favorite Giant?
Of all time, my favorite Giant is Lawrence Taylor because no one commanded defense like he did.
Definitely. Listen, I'm a Cowboy fan. I've been suffering for a while. It almost feels, well, I mean, not almost, but I go every year though, Brent, and it's literally a home game for the Cowboys when they play the Giants.
The Giants,
For a
yeah, the
long time.
Giants are not what they used to. It's been a rough stretch of being a Giants fan, and it used to be able. My wife is a diehard Giants fan and wasn't a baseball fan until we got married, and she used to be able to say, "Well, I don't know why you could pick the Mets. We're used to winning in the Giants," and you can't really say that anymore because she saw 4 Super Bowls in her lifetime, and I was 3 years old when the Mets won in 1986, so I have no memory of that. But
Well, well, it's interesting because obviously I think the Giants, there's a lot of pressure. Obviously, this past offseason with GM Joe Shane and Coach Brian Dable. I mean, a lot of things have to click right for the Giants, right? I mean,
yes,
I think that the patience level for John Mara, especially after seeing Saquon Barkley win a Super Bowl, I think is as thin as ever. So it'll be interesting about the Giants for sure.
Yeah.
And the Cowboys are the Cowboys. Jerry's incompetent, and I don't know. 7-10 a year for me, I think, for the Cowboys for sure. Hockey team.
Devils, but hockey's my fourth sport, but I love going to Devils games. I love that there's a New Jersey team. I mean, it was tough to see them lose in the playoffs.
Yeah.
I love that New Jersey at least has one team and not just any Jersey team, a team that has the New Jersey identity and has the Devils branding. We need to have something because, after what happened with the Nets, you need something to hang your hat on.
And let's be fair, going to Prudential Center is as good a venue to catch anything, and hockey's still affordable. I can't say the same for the NFL and obviously MLB. It's getting pricey for sure. NBA.
Oh, Knicks. I'm a lifelong Knicks fan. The 1994 Knicks are, after the Mets, my second. That
was a great team. That was a great team, and even the '99 team. I think a healthy Patrick Ewing, a healthy Larry Johnson. Spurs don't win that title. I'm
that's
convinced.
True.
I'm convinced of that.
And whatever I was talking about the '94 Knicks, you assume that Jordan and the Bulls no, they lost to the Houston Rockets, and John Starks was my favorite player. And right now, I don't expect a win against the Celtics in this series, but this Knicks team is fun to watch. But we can't get complacent and be like, oh, we're just happy to make the playoffs.
No, listen,
you have to strike.
It's definitely a puncher's chance against the Celtics. Yeah. I mean, they can play. Not sure if you're into this, but Marvel or DC Comics kind of guy?
No, I really liked the Iron Man movies, so I'll go but I mean the original Batman, the Tim Burton Batman is my favorite. So it's tough. I liked the Iron Man movies, and I liked the early Batman movies. So I guess I'll lean Marvel, but I really like Batman's my favorite superhero. So.
Okay. Favorite cuisine and any restaurant in particular?
Yeah, I mean, Japanese food is my favorite, but I also love Italian. You can't live in New Jersey and not like Italian food. Chicken parm is the great standby, but I like hibachi, Japanese food.
Okay.
I can give you a lot of food and they make it right in front of you.
And Brent, obviously you're great at your job at being a journalist, but I gotta believe that your favorite job is being a dad, right?
Yeah, I have two wonderful. My wife Lindsay, we've been married for now 8 years. We married in 2018, so I can't do math. Yeah, so 8 years, or 7 years. Okay, I can't do math. I'm very bad at math. But we've been together for a decade. My wife Lindsay, who's very lovely, very wonderful, and we have 2 kids: 1-year-old named Carter and a 4-year-old named Everly. And Everly is really wants to be a singer and actress and dances all over the house. And Carter seems like he's going to be an athlete. He runs all over everything. We have a dog named Hodges. We live in Spotswood, and yeah, it is the most. I got married later in life and had kids later in life, but it is the most treasured thing to be a father.
Good stuff there. Brent, we started the show talking about Matt Arco, but I know in recent months, another loss that hit the journalistic community, and I know one that hit me specifically because I thought so highly of him, and that was Michael Aaron.
Yes.
And I loved Michael. I had the privilege of being a Reporters Roundtable multiple times with Michael Aaron. And, he was a guest on my show, and I always valued his time. And you want to talk about a guy that was so transparent and down to earth. That was Michael Aaron. And what were your thoughts and memories about Michael Aaron? Obviously, when he passed last summer, tough news, obviously, certainly. What were your fondest memories of Michael Aaron?
Michael was a legend and the kind of person when you walked in the room, he commanded that room and you knew that he was an icon, you respected him, but he never personally made you feel like that. He always made you feel like you were welcome. And as a young journalist, because my first time on Roundtable, I was in my 20s, just started at the Bureau, and he made me feel so at home. And I will always be forever grateful for that. But we talked about Matt being one of the voices of New Jersey. Michael Aaron was the voice of New Jersey journalism. He was the dean of the press corps, and all of us looked up to him. And it was a massive loss when he left us.
Definitely. I still miss Michael to this day, for sure. Brent, not to give spoilers away, but any big things you're working on right now, not just obviously with your newsletter, but any big stories that maybe we should keep an eye out for?
We're working on something about the inner workings of the Republican primary right now, about the battle for Trump's endorsement. We're going to be doing more on the candidates. We have a video series coming out. We brought all 11 candidates into our office to ask them the same questions on a number of topics and lightning round type stuff. And we'll be rolling that out next week. And there'll be a new newsletter every Thursday. And I'm also a singer in a band, and we have a new single coming out next Friday.
I saw that in your bio, man. Tell us a little bit about this about alternative rock band, bro.
Yeah. We're called the Clydes. We've been around for a decade. My brother Brian is the guitarist. Our best friend Andrew is the bassist. And we've put out a number of albums. We're on a label up in Hawthorne called Min 400 Records. And we put out a single earlier this year, and we have another one coming out on an album later in the year. And we some people say that we missed our time frame because we sound like a 90s rock band. And I'll take that because that was my favorite era of music. And, guitar, alternative rock, and I'm the singer.
Well, I'm a little older than you are, but I remember growing up in the 90s, and I loved alternative rock. I grew up on Nirvana, Pearl Jam, STP, a lot of great bands. It kind of makes me feel old when I tune into certain terrestrial radio, and when I hear classic rock and I hear Bon Jovi, I almost want to like drive my head through a wall. I'm like, wait a second, how old am I that Bon Jovi is classic rock now? What's going on?
Nirvana on 104.3 recently. I was like, that's, I remember Nirvana. I'm old enough to turn on MTV and they were still on. But I like rock music. I like the sound of guitars. So we're going to keep cranking it out. And also our band, the Clydes, we're named after a New York Knick. We're named after Clyde Frazier. So that's where we took our name. So if we like to mix sports and music.
Listen, I love that. Let me know when your next concert is, man. Whenever I'm assuming I'd love to go see you in person. And again, Brent, thank you for your time. I really appreciate this conversation. We've really delved into a lot, and I appreciate your faith in my brand of journalism because I think so highly of yours. I'll give you the last word here tonight.
I appreciate having me on to talk about Matt and to talk about the race and an in-depth program that really asks a lot of questions. I appreciate that because we could certainly use more of that in journalism because people need to know what's going on, and things like this do it. So thank you for having me on, and please stay tuned. There's a lot going on in this governor's race to talk about, and from here until November.
I appreciate the kind words, man. Thank you so much for that. And listen, let's go Mets, let's go Yankees. Maybe Subway Series. That'd be nice. 25 years later, right?
Yeah, I mean that's right. 25 years. Wow. That would give me a lot of agita to go up against the Yankees and Aaron Judge, but I'll take that risk.
Yeah, we'll definitely see. But Matt, again, shout out to Matt Arco, and great man we lost, unfortunately. And again, great testimonial by you over the weekend, Brent. And thank you for your time, folks. He is Brent Johnson, politics reporter for NJ Advanced Media. You can check him out. Obviously, subscribe to his newsletter and, of course, follow him on X. And keep up the great work, brother. And we'll talk to you soon here on Real Talk.
Thank you, Fernando.
Take care.
You too.
Folks, good stuff there. Brent Johnson, obviously, great work with NJ Advanced Media. If you don't follow him on X, or check out what he's doing with NJ Advanced Media. Again, it takes a few seconds. Subscribe, and it's a great newsletter. You'll get to sort of be in the know of what's going on, obviously, in New Jersey media. Folks, it's 6:30 here on the East Coast. Great program, obviously, tonight here with Brent Johnson. I know he's very, very busy. Appreciate him giving us almost an hour of his time. My goodness, I think I kept him on a lot longer than I think he would have liked, but he's a gentleman, and I appreciate certainly his insight here this evening. And again, as we started the program, once again, my sincerest condolences go out to the family of Matt Arco from NJ Advanced Media, a great journalist, and once again, just an even greater person. And we need more of those, especially in today's media landscape here in the Garden State. So again, great words by Brent Johnson, and certainly a great breakdown of what's going on during this election cycle here in 2025. Folks, you don't want to go anywhere. Again, as I mentioned, it's 6:30 on the East Coast here exactly. Like, comment, and share. Again, if you haven't subscribed lately, please do so. Shout out there to Assemblywoman Victoria Flynn. Tune in tonight here. Go Knicks. Yeah, listen, listen, whenever you can beat a team from Boston, you got to do that. So good stuff there by the Assemblywoman, and I appreciate her tuning in here, obviously, from wherever and however she's doing so here tonight on Facebook Live via streaming and also on the Jersey First YouTube channel. Folks, you don't want to go anywhere because it's time for final thoughts. And folks, from one great journalist in Brent Johnson, let's go to an atrocious one in Tommy boy, Tom Moran, who, again, I thought we were all rid of him after he was let go as the editor-in-chief of the editorial board at the Star-Ledger. But again, somebody, I don't know, maybe in a drunken state, decided it was a good idea to hire Tom Moran. And, whenever it comes to Trump derangement syndrome, we can always rely on Tommy because, again, I think he is like the bona fide leader when it comes to symptoms. And trust me, there's no shortage of Trump derangement syndrome in New Jersey, right? We have Max Pizarro with Insider NJ. We have Alan Steinberg, who obviously it's way past his bedtime at 6:30 Eastern time. And whenever he's awake, I'm sure he's ranting and raving about Donald Trump and, talking about it on his podcast that nobody watches, but I still appreciate the 5 people that do every week, Alan Steinberg. Or of course, we have Chucky, Charles Style with, NorthJersey.com with the Bergen Record. But I would argue that Tommy exemplifies what makes Trump derangement syndrome so insufferable. And the reason that people, again, have lost faith in the news, whether it's the establishment media nationally or in New Jersey, is because of the blatant bias. And again, nobody personifies that better than Tom Moran. Of course, you can check out his latest column there with Advanced Local. Can't believe that they decided to hire Tom Moran, but it's this is sucker born every minute, as they say, folks. So as you can see there, obviously, Tom Moran decides to call it Trump's nosedive in the polls could save our democracy. Now, again, I don't know what nosedive Tom Moran's talking about, because when you look at polling when it comes to securing the border, which his predecessor never did, and of course, Tom Moran never once objected to that, as millions of illegals were flooding our cities, committing heinous acts, destroying the quality of life in our cities and our communities, right? Having kids here, obviously crossing the border illegally, pregnant, having their kids here, overcrowding our schools, you name it, folks. Not a peep from Tom Moran. But everything that Donald Trump ran on, he's delivering, I think, to some extent, in securing the border, bringing back manufacturing jobs, more production of crude oil, which again is bringing down the cost of gas. Now, you wouldn't know that in New Jersey, but because of the gas tax in its last phase, which kicked in on January 1st, folks, we are paying almost 45 cents more per gallon because of the gas tax enacted by Trenton. Not by Donald Trump, not by Republicans, but by Trenton Democrats. Okay? Or the idea that, hey, it's getting warmer, we want to go down the shore, visit family, go down to the boardwalk, go down as far as Cape May, or go to Long Branch or wherever. Well, it's going to cost you a little bit more on the Turnpike and Parkway because of the increase in tolls. And never mind the increase in property taxes that we continue to experience. Folks, that's not Donald Trump's fault. Okay? That's not the Republican Party's fault, whether national or statewide. But don't tell it to Tom Moran, because again, the level of derangement is kind of alarming for a guy his age. And Tom is his early 90s, so I mean, cognitively, I'm not sure where he's at. But the idea that, there's no accountability whatsoever for policies by the left that have been destructive, you never once hear a peep from Tom Moran. Okay? Or the idea, again, listen, I get it that these tariffs are challenging. But folks, again, he ran on this platform. And on November the 5th of last year, Donald Trump just didn't fall back into the presidency. He won it with a mandate. It wasn't just winning the Electoral College like he did in 2016. He also won the popular vote decisively, where blacks, Hispanics, college-educated women, single mothers, single fathers, Asians, Americans of Middle Eastern descent, you name it, saw the direction that this country was going in under the 46th president when he was awake. Or his vice president if she was sober. But never once did you hear a peep from Tom Moran about the disastrous trajectory that we were on. By now he wants to make you believe that somehow Donald Trump is taking a nosedive in the polls. So let's sort of delve into this nonsense in this latest column here. Trump is no Napoleon. His misrule and cruelty have made him the most unpopular president in modern history after his first 100 days. What Tom Moran bases it, I don't know. Is it a poll in the Moran household? Is it polling his wife, his daughter? Like, who exactly are we polling, Tom? Right? Majorities now oppose him even on the economy and immigration. That's not true about immigration. Border crossings are down to almost a historic low. But again, to expect Tom Moran to tell you the truth about that, again, would require Tommy, don't forget, to have that pesky 4-syllable word. You know what that is, right? Integrity. He doesn't have it. More on that later. In a fresh New York Times Siena College poll, yes, because we all know Siena College and the New York Times, that's objective. Jesus. 66% said the word, quote, chaotic describes this mess, and 59% said scary is a good fit as well. Even Joe Rogan, the mega podcast who endorsed Trump last year, is turning against him using words like stupid and horrific to describe his behavior. I find it odd that Tom Moran will actually sit through a podcast by Joe Rogan when he spent the entire cycle criticizing independent media. Because somehow he's telling you, no, you have to believe the establishment media because we don't lie to you. Really? More on that later. This collapse in support for Trump may help save our democracy. And again, folks, this is getting tired. Tom Moran reminds me of like a lot of my ex-girlfriends who are just whiny. Like they would bitch to live and they live to bitch. Newsflash, it seems like Tom Moran and the American left haven't learned their lesson since November. Okay? There was no threat to American democracy. Okay? Tom Moran would make you believe that. But those of us who are cognitively at a much better state than Tom Moran will tell you otherwise. Right? Because if you look at other leaders who have grabbed authoritarian powers, once they were elected to office, they have one thing in common. Like Napoleon, they began with overwhelming public support. Stephen Levitsky, a Harvard professor and co-author of How Democracies Die, notes that authoritarian leaders in El Salvador, Peru, and Venezuela all had approval ratings over 80% when they began taking power from judges, persecuting political opponents, and limiting the free press. It's interesting, though, Tom, because you know what? People like you and representatives in the House, like Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, were the first one to say, well, you know, the president of the United States should disregard the courts and judges when it came to what was selective and convenient to them. Like something like student loans, which, yeah, sure, it's important. I'm still paying them back. But when it comes to enforcing the border and getting dangerous criminals out of our cities, folks, unlike the previous border czar that never went to the border and was too busy drinking that second bottle of vodka in cabinet meetings, you know, Kamala Harris, at least this border czar now with Tom Homan, at least they're doing their job. They're getting criminals, dangerous criminals, off of our streets. Dangerous illegals. Because while Tom Moran wants to virtue signal, he forgets important names like Kate Steinle and Laken Riley and Americans that have been victimized by dangerous criminal illegals. But albeit, Tom Moran doesn't care about that. Tom Moran would rather have a party in his pants and blow a load over himself because he has to scream fascism and authoritarianism and democracy's dying now, folks. And I get it. Tom Moran wants to, have this perpetual erection in his pants about these talking points. But as we all know, Americans are past that. Not Tom Moran, though. More on that later. Okay. Keep in mind, too, that Trump's popularity is likely to continue dropping through the summer. That's happened to every other president since the 1990s. We tend to sour on them after the 100-day honeymoon is over. Bill Clinton's approval rating dropped by 11 points between April and September of his first year, and so did George W. Bush's. Barack Obama lost 15 points, and Joe Biden lost 14 points. Now, again, I'm not going to read the rest of this column, but again, folks, what's interesting about Tom Moran is that Tom Moran would have you believe, right, that the American left seems to have all the answers to our problems. And what did we learn in the last 4 years? That the American left was every bit the source of all our problems. the border being wide open, inflation, worrying about woke bullshit. Because again, someone like Tom Moran would easily want to shame you if you misgender someone. Or Tom Moran is someone that, probably has his pronouns in his email signature. Folks, regular everyday Americans and New Jerseyans don't care about that. Regular everyday Americans don't care about all the woke bullshit, about pronouns and, coddling mentally ill people. Grown men playing dress up and make believe. Right? You know who they are, right? Right? Trans people. Or grown women that, again, want to play dress up and makeup, right? And chop off their hair and chop off their breasts and want to be tomboys and somehow are trying to convince you that they're men, like men are trying to convince you that they're women. No, folks, that's not the case. And that's not built in reality. Okay? I remember taking high school biology many moons ago. And I know the fundamental difference between biological reality and woke bullshit like social constructs. Tom Moran doesn't know that difference. Okay? So when you wonder why NJ.com and the Star Ledger was struggling as much as it did, well, you can ask David Wallerstein or you can ask me. It's because people don't trust media. And when they don't trust media, it's because they don't trust people like Tom Moran. Right? And that's the thing. He'd have you believe that somehow the 47th president isn't popular with his base. No, folks, he still is. And yes, there might be some economic hardships right now. But let's be honest, to get out of the economic shithole that we were in under the 46th president, well, it's going to take some work. But we're seeing some progress, right? Aren't we seeing, again, the price of crude oil going down? Yes, of course. Are we not seeing hundreds of thousands of manufacturing jobs returning to U.S. soil? That's important, right? And creating jobs. The idea that we're seeing safer streets and safer communities because we're getting rid of dangerous criminal illegals. And the idea that Tom Moran, right, again, lives with this perpetual erection about standing up for the worst types of people. Criminals, wife beaters, right? Like Mr. Garcia, that seems like the American left and Democrats, at the federal level are, again, all about due process. Did Lincoln Riley have due process, Tom? Did Kate Steinle have due process? No, they didn't. Do other Americans that have been victimized by illegals, where's their due process? So you don't give a shit about theirs. You only give a shit about due process when it suits you and it suits your bullshit narrative. Okay? President's still very popular. You saw that in a rally last week to commemorate the 100 days. And we're seeing that with policies that are going to continue to benefit the American people. But again, Tom Moran, he'd rather keep lying to you. He's good at it. How do I know? Folks, let me give you the most succinct way to describe Tom Moran. So when people in New Jersey struggle to believe in media, folks, there's good media out there. My guest tonight, Brent Johnson, is a prime example. Good, responsible media who calls balls and strikes and does it fairly. Tom Moran doesn't. And I can tell you because I've compiled a list of things that best summarizes Tom Moran. Tom Moran, for 4 years, if not more so, was telling you Joe Biden was fine. That cognitively he's doing somersaults and he's doing the calculus homework of students that, journalists in the White House press briefing room, that their kids had assigned to them, yeah, Joe Biden can do calculus homework, no problem. And we've known for a while, long before last summer's disastrous debate against Donald Trump, we knew Joe Biden was declining, but not a word from Tom Moran. And you would think for someone as old as Tom Moran, who's older than Joe Biden, he would understand the importance of cognitive decline, because we're seeing that with his columns. But Tom Moran blatantly lied to you and told you that Joe Biden was fine. Tom Moran also lied to you and told you, you better get the vaccine because you're endangering people. What have we learned about the vaccine, Tom? 5 years later? Yeah, I thought so. Tom Moran also told us the Hunter Biden laptop story was fake. It was made up. No, Tom, we've come to learn it was very real. Okay. Tom Moran also told us that the border was secure. No, it wasn't. 11 million illegals flooding our cities, destroying our communities, destroying our real estate, destroying our schools, our way of life. Yeah. The border was secure, all right. Okay. Tom Moran also told us that, inflation's transitory. It's just a bleep on the radar. It's no big deal. No, it was a big deal, Tom. And don't blame COVID. It was atrocious policies by the Biden administration, which you never called out. Tom Moran also told us that 2020 was the most legitimate and secure election in American electoral history. Really? Really, Tom? Folks, let's remember who the propagandist is. It's not Fernando Uribe. It's not others. When we think about Tom Moran, folks, he's the epitome of what a propagandist is. So to advance local, shame on you, hiring and promoting bullshit journalism like Tom Moran. Folks, based on this record and much more I can name, folks, you should never trust Tom Moran again. It's just not worth it. And while Tom Moran might want a virtue signal, folks, I'm over here talking facts. I'm over here doing reputable journalism. So when we think about Mickey Mouse journalists with Mickey Mouse traffic, yeah, Tom Moran, yeah, that's the poster child. When it comes to real traffic, yeah, it's here because it's real talk. We're not the same. Tommy, you might want to go to Walgreens and get some ointment for that burn. Oye, porque eso quema. Ouch. Now, from one useless human like Tom Moran, let's talk about another useless human in this election cycle, and that's Ravi Bala. Folks, one of the more atrocious candidates I've ever seen running for the New Jersey State Assembly. Let's give you a perspective again about why Ravi Bala is so dangerous. Okay? I'll give you that there. Okay? Now, obviously, in no particular order, certainly, about Ravi Bala. But as you can see, the slideshow there pretty much tells you everything. As Hoboken continues to flood during the Bala administration, what's he doing? Oh, yes. Ravi Bala would rather worry about pronouns than public safety or infrastructure or property taxes. That's who Ravi Bala is. Ravi Bala would rather coddle, grown men playing makeup and playing dress up and make-believe and putting on makeup than actually worrying about issues that affect everyday Hoboken residents. But somehow somebody told Ravi that he's a good candidate for the New Jersey State Assembly. Can someone explain that to me? Can someone explain to me how Ravi Bala, a guy who, upon taking office on January 1st, 2018, with everything going on in Hoboken, like parking and property taxes, no, let's make Hoboken a sanctuary city. Folks, these are serious times. We have serious problems, and we need serious people to solve them. Ravi Bala isn't one of them. And it's interesting because the 32nd Legislative District, which is comprised of the city of Hoboken, sections of the Jersey City Heights, and downtown Jersey City, arguably are the most progressive of all the 40 legislative districts. Now, again, I think, where you stand, on the political spectrum and your political IQ, we're going to agree or disagree. But a lot of smart people live in LD 32. And you have choices coming up on June 10th. One that comes to mind is Krista Fonseca, hardworking Jersey City woman, fellow Yankee fan. Most importantly, a woman with an inspiring story, a woman who's overcome a lot to get to where she's at, where nobody handed her anything. Crystal is knocking on doors, Crystal is showing people how transparent and genuine she is. Folks, when I think about transparency and who's genuine, that's not Ravi Bala. Give me a break. This is a guy who cares more about pronouns than public safety, which is why people are getting assaulted in broad daylight in Hoboken. When we think about the infestation of rats, not the rodents and the public health hazard that congregate around garbage bags in Hoboken on Washington Street, we're talking about the rats that work at City Hall. Because property taxes have gone up 16% in Hoboken, 50% of an increase in spending in his office alone. But Ravi Bala is looking out for you? Oh, really? Oh. And Ravi Bala is so progressive, right? Folks, here's a history lesson about Ravi Bala. When Annette Chaparro was the assemblywoman representing Hoboken, you know what Ravi Bala did? Because again, mayors have a say about the selection of assembly candidates or incumbent assemblymen or assemblywomen. Yeah, Ravi's so pro-woman. He's all about sticking up for women and women of color and being progressive. Yes, he decided to replace a Latina with a white man. Nevertheless, his white chief of staff, John Allen, who, folks, I get it. You can own bars and you're good at that. But let's be honest. What qualifications does John Allen have to begin with? And has anyone had a more bullshit 2-year term in the state assembly than John Allen? Please name me somebody. I can't think of them. But that's who Ravi Bala replaced a Latina with. So for all this bullshit about, oh, I'm for women and I'm progressive. No, you're not, Ravi. You're full of shit. Okay? Because if you were, you wouldn't replace a Latina with a white man. And mind you, folks, I'm the last one to ever play the race card with anything. Because that's not my way. But if you're going to be about being progressive here, and if you're going to be about being for women, then be about it, Ravi. Don't try to bullshit us because we can see through your bullshit. So you have choices coming up on June the 10th in the 32nd Legislative District. Sure, you have the incumbent there, Jessica Ramirez. Good legislator. I disagree with her on various positions. But she's been doing the work. That's fine. I'll give her that. Folks, you also have a choice in Krista Fonseca, for example, coming up in the 32nd Legislative District. But one choice you shouldn't be making is Ravi Bala. Okay? I mean, here's a guy having a full-blown meltdown because his plane was canceled. His flight was canceled to go to the DNC in Chicago. Okay? I know women who don't bitch and moan as much as Ravi Bala. Okay? I've had ex-girlfriends who don't even whine and bitch and moan like Ravi Bala. And mind you, folks, I've had some insufferable ex-girlfriends. Okay? Some downright nasty ex-girlfriends. But they're nowhere near the whiny bitches that Ravi Bala has become. Okay? Folks, you can see it there. Slideshow tells you everything. And that's not like speculation. That's not, oh, rumors. Folks, those are facts about Ravi Bala. Those are facts. Okay? So when you think about, hey, Ravi Bala, the politician, yeah, that's not a good one. But what makes it worse is that Ravi Bala is an even worse human being. You've seen that. You've seen it ethically. You've seen the New Jersey State Supreme Court sanction Ravi Bala. Folks, do you think they just sanction people because you're just incompetent? Maybe. But when you're engaging in pure ethical violations, that is when the New Jersey State Supreme Court has to step in. And they have. It's not slander or defamation. Folks, these are facts. And for everybody in the 32nd Legislative District, you should know better. How Ravi Bala is polling is beyond me. And I get it. He had a good showing last year in a primary against U.S. Representative Rob Menendez. And I get it. People voted for Ravi as a backlash to Rob and his last name. I get it. Fine. You're entitled to vote whoever you want for. That's fine. But folks, Rob Menendez has been a good representative in the House. He's my congressman. Now, Rob and I don't agree on anything philosophically, but one thing I will always say about Rob Menendez is that he rolls rolled up his sleeves, went to Washington, and got to work. Which is more than I can say for Ravi Bala in Hoboken. Folks, Hoboken has turned to absolute shit under the Bala administration. To say nothing of the fact of who's enabled him, and those are people on the city council. You know, the charisma vacuum, Jim Doyle, Joe Quintero, who again is a living embodiment of how easy it is to get a lottery when this dimwit can get one. Or Phil Cohen, another useless bureaucrat in Hoboken. Okay. And last but not least, of course, the successor to Ravi Bala, Emily Jabbour. Yes, folks, there's a reason why Emily's running far, far away from the Bala administration record. And why wouldn't you? It's been embarrassing. Now, the mayor's race in Hoboken will be very interesting this November. More on that in the weeks in months ahead. But folks, again, there's a lot of intelligent people in the 32nd Legislative District. And when we think about alternatives and good choices on June 10th, folks, Ravi Bala isn't one of them. I don't know what more I need to tell you about to make you understand. As I said before, these are serious times. And we have serious problems. And we need serious people to solve them. Folks, oh my God, I can't say it any more than that. When I think about serious people that need to get to work, Ravi Bala isn't one of them. He just isn't. And the sooner you learn that, the better. Again, you have choices on June 10th. Without question, Ravi Bala shouldn't be one of them. And those are my final thoughts. Folks, before we call it a night here on the program, again, I want to thank NJ Advanced Media politics reporter Brent Johnson for his appearance tonight. And folks, again, the reason this show continues to do well and the traffic that you see is because of all of you at home. And without all of you, friends, family, colleagues, classmates, haters, frenemies, you name it, you're still tuning in. You are still finding a way to make this a part of your Monday night viewing. And folks, all these numbers you see before you every month for years now, all organic, folks. Nothing boosted, no paid ads. It's all organic, ladies and gentlemen, because you respect real journalism. And that's what we bring you here every single week on Jersey First TV. And when I think about the traffic, and again, folks, let me be humble for a minute here. I'm deeply grateful to all of you that make these numbers possible. I'm deeply grateful to all of you that make this traffic, again, a reality. Without all of you, these numbers, again, wouldn't happen. So from the bottom of my heart, again, I thank you. And I'm deeply humbled. And you know I'm not the most humble guy around. But folks, unlike those little Mickey Mouse journalists with little Mickey Mouse shows and their Mickey Mouse traffic, folks, here it's real traffic because it's real talk. We're not the same. And you know what? When I think about accomplishments like this and achievements, I think back to a guy who is my idol, my childhood hero, the nature boy, Ric Flair, because when I think about what real talk means and when I think about everyone that still hates me but still tunes in, folks, there's no better way to describe you all.
The bottom line, woo! Whether you like it or don't like it, learn to live with it because God bless you. It's the best thing going today.
Woo! Let's watch that again. Let's watch that again.
And the bottom line, woo! Whether you like it or don't like it, learn to live with it because God bless you. It's the best thing going today.
Woo! That's right, folks. It's always real traffic because it's real talk here on the program. Again, without all of you, those numbers wouldn't be possible. So thank you to all of you that tune in. And guess what? You'll keep tuning in because you can't help yourselves. And that's our show for this week. Once again, I want to thank Brent Johnson, fellow Rutgers alum and the politics reporter for NJ Advanced Media for a very interesting hour, breaking down the governor's race, obviously state assembly race, and of course, and most importantly, folks, a tribute to Matt Arco, reporter with NJ Advanced Media, who unfortunately at only the age of 39, we lost him last week. So once again, our condolences go out to the family of Matt Arco, a great journalist, but an even greater person. We miss you, Matt. God bless you, and rest in peace. Again, I want to thank Brent for a great testimonial and a great dedication during tonight's broadcast. Folks, you can always check out Real Talk on our social media. Of course, like us on Facebook. Of course, follow us on Instagram and Twitter. Whether you subscribe to us on YouTube, what are you waiting for? Subscribe. You'll be automatically notified of all the great content we bring you every single week here on Real Talk. And of course, folks, whether you get your podcast on Spotify or SoundCloud, download Jersey First and take it with you during the summer months. Of course, folks, like I say all the time, you're on your smartphone, check out Jersey First. Trust me, you won't be disappointed. And I can't say enough what a privilege it is to be on the dream team of Garden State Media. That's right, folks. It is Jersey First TV. Of course, brand new episodes of The Nader Narrative premiere every Thursday. And of course, brand new episodes of Real Talk with Fernando Uribe premiere every Monday night. Check your local listings for start times. And of course, we appreciate you tuning in here. And of course, watching the live broadcast. And of course, sharing the episodes throughout the week. I wish, remember, folks, if it's unbiased, unfiltered, and unafraid, it's always Real Talk here on the Jersey First Television Network. I am the generational talent in Garden State Media because my level of honesty, folks, now more than ever, is truly necessary in this era of journalistic deception. That's right, folks. It's me, Fernando Uribe, the most handsome face that runs the place. That's right, folks. Again, we appreciate you tuning in here. Please party responsibly. Again, if you're going out tonight for Cinco de Mayo, be careful out there. Again, please party responsibly. Uber or Lyft it to and from wherever you're going tonight, folks. Enjoy the rest of your week here. And a special shout out coming up this Sunday for all the moms out there. For my beautiful mother. Again, folks, if you ever wonder where I get my good looks from, you can always thank my mother for that. That's who I'm grateful for. And of course, my devoted aunt, of course, my bestie, my other best friend down in Kentucky, and all the moms out there, folks, God bless you, because every day is Mother's Day for everything you do for us and our families, the backbone of our families, the ones that make us laugh, the ones that make us think, the ones that make us really appreciate being with them. Folks, that's our moms. When you think about moms, you think about really the nurturers and the ones that make us feel our best, even at our lowest. You can thank our moms for that. So love you, Mom. Love you, Madrina. Love to all the moms out there, folks. This Sunday for Mother's Day, enjoy it out there. And we'll see you next week here on Real Talk with Fernando Uribe here on Jersey First TV. Folks, thanks for stopping by. Now, always remember, stay classy, everyone.